Hey everybody, and welcome to Memento, a podcast by Washington Avenue Christian Church. See, here at Washington Avenue, we understand that sometimes you forget who you are, and sometimes we forget what we're supposed to do, and sometimes we even forget what we talked about on Sunday morning. So in an effort to remind ourselves of who we are and what we're supposed to do, and even what we talked about on Sunday, we bring to you this podcast, Memento. And I've got Jake here with me again today. We are going to be having a discussion about Ephesians, and I'm excited to dive into that. I don't know about you guys, but Jake and I really loved doing this a couple of weeks ago, and it was awesome, and it felt a lot better than just like one of us doing it. Yeah. So we're going to lean into it a little bit more together. So to start us off today, Jake, tell me what has stood out to you or jumped out to you from the past couple of weeks since we did this. Again, we've had 2 sermons.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, one thing that I noticed is I kind of watched the podcast over, which I don't normally do with, like, my sermons and stuff. But I watched it over, and I noticed 2 things. One, I touch my nose, like, every 5 seconds.
You do?
And then, like, I also say like every other word. So... That's annoying, and I'm going to try and not do that this time. But, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a ton of fun. We just got to, like, have a conversation with microphones and cameras in front of us. But I enjoyed it. Hopefully, like to come back whenever you guys want me to. But, yeah, man, I really enjoyed your sermon, and I'm not just trying to, like, puff you up or anything. But, yeah, I really enjoyed your sermon. I was telling Isaac that sometimes I get not annoyed or anything like that, but like sometimes I don't like being the guy that you like ask me about your sermon beforehand, because then I like know what you're gonna say. But I also love it at the same time because it makes me feel cool that you want to talk to me about it. But also, it was cool to see just how you implemented like what you were gonna say. But man, the part about like Sammy's dad coming to the door, yeah, I mean, like, that was just huge for me, and I think really for Aubrey as well. Mm-hmm. Like, we just talked about that a lot this weekend, and you know, just because, you know, yeah, we've all need that in our lives, and to just feel that like type of love from a heavenly Father is just something that you can't get from anyone else, you know. And
yeah.
You
know, it's funny because you're not supposed to do this when you write a sermon. You're not supposed to write a sermon around an illustration. And I don't only want to talk about my sermon.
Yeah.
But as we were thinking about clothes, like, that was kind of the first thing that popped into my mind was the whole story of like Samantha. You know, that's just kind of a long family joke. So I've heard that a lot of times. But as I was reading about like this old self and new self, like, that was the first thing that popped into my head. So I was like, I don't know where else I'm going to go, but I'm definitely going to use this. And you know, so that had been percolating for a long time. And in writing the sermon, and I practiced it on Saturday. I came up here and stood in the sanctuary and practiced it, and came out like I wanted it to. But then, man, like at 8:00, it like hit me so hard. I was like getting emotional.
Yeah.
And then at 9:30, like, Samantha was sitting in the front row, and I was a mess. And then at 11:00, it was just like I was emotionally raw from having almost cried a couple of times. Anyway, so it hit me even really hard, and I knew that it was coming. My father-in-law, John, was texting me this morning. He was like, bro, that wasn't fair.
You should have told me.
Yeah. He was like, that wasn't fair. We were watching, and he said that he got teary-eyed too, which is like, if you know John at all, like, Samantha's seen him cry twice.
Wow.
And so, like, maybe 3 times now. And so, like, that, it hit him even, was like, cool. That.
Well, I just think it's cool. Not to talk about your sermon the whole time, man, but, like, I just think it's cool when, you know, the pastor can be like vulnerable like that, and I think you did a really good job. And I heard even me and my dad were talking about it today at lunch, and he was like, I know that was a big deal for Shane. Like,
it's funny, he was sitting there, and you know how your dad is. He's just like sitting there like this, right? And I like walked by, and he was like, I was like, that's all I needed from Matt Earls right there. That was it, man.
He told me, he was like, I just gave him a thumbs up because he was gonna get it from other people. But
Give me your thoughts on that practicum. Like what?
Yeah.
Aside from like stressing about your portion of it, like.
Yeah, I thought it was super fun. You know, we had never done anything like that before, and even if I just got to be like on the worship side of like, you know, being in the congregation, I think that would have been cool just to like be able to watch and to hear from 3 different people that quickly. I thought it was fun. I mean, it was a little awkward in the transition being the middle guy, just being, because normally, you know, I'd pray or something and I was just like, all right, I'm done now, so next guy. Yeah, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was super cool, and not that a church Sunday normally feels super long, but it sure made that time go by fast when it was like 12 o'clock already. I was like, oh wow. But I thought it was super cool. I loved Jim's illustration from Max.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was good. Yeah, it was just very Jim, you know, filled with very lots of puns and that sort of stuff, and but also very well thought out. And you know, I think I'll shout him out. Zach Smith asked you, and what I said to him yesterday is like what I learned. What the Spirit taught me through my sermon was just for the first time, I think I understood emotionally what it meant that, like, I'm not enough, but Christ is enough, and because Christ is manifesting himself in me, like, I am enough. And, like, that, like, I've known that, but, like, never, like, emotionally. Like, it was always just here and never really down here. And I think we were singing like Christ be magnified, and I was just like, I couldn't even tell you what was visualized in my brain, but it was like literally like an orange, and then like it was an empty orange, and then something was inside of it, and it was like Christ was like,
apple?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe not an apple, but I don't know. It's just I can't even like put into words what I visualized, but I was just like, oh. That makes so much sense now. I'm like, I've never, and that is a big thing for me, because that's just something that I deal with, is feeling like I'm not enough, and even talk to like some of my mentors and my counselor about that all the time, and that's what we've talked about for 5 years, and just to like finally understand that like you're not enough, dude, but Jesus is, and he's in you and manifesting himself in you, so you're good, you know. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. But I since you stole what I was going to say, just real quick, I actually really liked at the end of what you said. I don't know how intentional you were about this, but like you made the potential small group leader of, you know, a high school girl, like a 60-year-old person.
Yeah.
Which I love, because like we're really big on intergenerationality here at Washington Avenue Christian Church, and we speak that language a lot, but we're still really in the middle of like trying to figure out what that looks like. Yeah. And I think that, you know, for whatever reason, right or more likely wrong, we just like hit this cap where it's like after, you know, your 30s, you're not really like young enough or cool enough, or maybe relevant. It's energetic enough to like hang out with the youths. Yeah. And so I hope that people like heard that and were like, I can do this. I have the time. I have the wisdom. Like that's what these kids need more than you being cool and wearing, you know, the right clothes or anything like that. What these kids need is your wisdom and your longevity in having walked with Jesus for a really, really long time, and absolutely. Having lived that out in your daily. Yeah.
It's my sermon writing process is kind of interesting. Like, I don't know what it's like for other people, but I just kind of study for a little bit and then like literally just kind of like word barf. So it which to me makes it kind of cool, because it's like it doesn't really feel like it's me, because it's just like I edited that sermon like once. And it was like after a couple of days after I wrote it, like So it's just like it all just kind of comes out. But yeah, that came out, and like I think it's just an overflow of the Spirit, and also just like the intergenerational thing that you're talking about, man. Like I just believe in that so much. Like you know, these kids really need someone who can just speak life into them. And yeah, you don't got to be 20. You don't have to wear Vans or like
those are shoes.
Yeah. You know, just like you don't have to be relevant in the ways that you think that you need to be. Like you just need to like know who Jesus is and like love people and love kids, you know, and those kids need that. And I need someone in my youth ministry who's older than me and can bring in perspectives that I don't have, you know, like, yes, I can connect with the students well, but like you have like, if I asked a 60-year-old to come in, that's like 3 of my lives, you know? So like they could come in and like, hey, you know, Jake, who like has some sort of wisdom, like I've lived 3 of him. So, you know, like it's just so beneficial for our kids and for me and just really everyone involved. And yeah, like that was definitely intentional.
Yeah. Cool. So. Yeah. I love it. I also just really liked the shortness of it and how quickly it moved. I think it might be fun. Maybe we talk to Jim about this, but if like one of the practicums was like this.
Yeah.
Just like a discussion.
Yes. I think that would be super like, cool. Yeah.
I don't know.
Like it would be scary.
Yes.
Because it's like no prep. But like, yeah, no, I would love that. I think it'd be cool to bring maybe not even just like us, but like to bring different types of people, you know, and like different perspectives. And, you know, I'd love to, get a bunch of different type of people up there and not just 3 dudes, you know, with blonde hair and blue eyes, you know, literally all the same.
Silver hair.
So yeah, we're silver hair. Love you, Jim.
Let's talk about Ephesians more specifically here a little bit. So Jake alluded to it already, but one of Jake's WIA guys came up to me on Sunday night after our class that we're in together, and he said, like, how did the Spirit convict you in your own sermon? And I was like wrecked, because literally nobody's ever asked me that before in my entire life. And so that really made me think. But I want to ask you, and again, not to just talk about my sermon but that is the most recent thing. Yeah. So that's why we're talking about it. But like, how did you feel the Spirit convicting you through the message on Sunday?
Yeah. I mean, so the bottom line or the main thought was consider what is done for you and pick the clothes that are right and true, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Except it was in a song.
Yeah. I don't know how to sing it. I don't watch Daniel the Tiger or whatever.
No, you're missing out.
Well, maybe one day.
Life truth.
I think some people, maybe for me, it was just like kind of realizing my story and understanding like what that really means to like pick the right clothes. But I think some people might think, and for me, I thought that like whenever I just like put on the robe, like it would just be like immediate, you know, like I'd just be like the exact, just following God's will immediately. And I think what people need to understand, and what I needed to understand and am still understanding, which is a complicated way of saying that, is that like it's so much more of a process, you know, like it's not like I put on the robe and I'm just like immediately like the best Christian ever, you know, like I just have the perfect relationship with God, and like no, like it's a journey, it's a process, you know, and like you know, you have to even realize that you have those type of clothes on, you know, and what that means. And like, yeah, I think as I was transitioning to like start working here, and like, I really like was coming from a different life, you know, after high school, like I was just making stupid mistakes, and coming here, you know, it was like, okay, like I've got the church hat on now, and like got the church shirt on, but like, what does that mean? You know, and like, even, you know, going back into my older groups of friends and people, and like wearing my church shirt, and like trying to figure out, they're like, what are you wearing, dude? You know, and like, they're like, why are you acting like that? And I'm like, well, this is who I am. This is actually who I was the whole time. Like, I just kind of went somewhere else, you know? And, so I think really it just convicted me of like being okay with the fact that like sanctification is a journey. You know?
Yeah, it's funny because I sent the sermon to our buddy Nate Malujan.
Yeah.
And he watched it last night and he was just texting me throughout the whole thing. But that's exactly what he brought up too. Is like he thinks that he said people think that it's just like one, like, okay, old self, new self, bam, done.
Yeah.
And it's not. And that kind of got me thinking, and just going off of what you were saying, but it's not even that you just like put on the new self and keep going, but like the first step to all of that is you got to take off your old self, right?
Yeah.
And like that is a process in and of itself, right? And you just, I mean, C.S. Lewis is a better storyteller than I am, but like even our own efforts to do it, like we don't do it enough, right? We don't allow it. Nolan was like, man, what really jumped out to me was like in Eustace's efforts to get it, like it didn't cause any pain, like because we're not willing enough to like cause ourselves the pain that it takes to take off the old to put on the new. And I was like, oh my gosh. So like putting on the new self is so good, but like if you're just putting on like, you know, Eustace is like putting on clothes designed for a boy, but like while he's still a dragon, doesn't work, right? Like you got to work through and like remove that callus before, so that like it fits like like the clothes fit like they're supposed to. Yeah.
Well, and even if you are willing, like even if you are willing to change, like you can't do it without him. Right. You know, like even if I want to go that deep, I physically can't do it without Jesus. You know,
you can't hold your breath. Like if you hold your breath for too long, you're going to pass out, and your body functions are going to start kicking back in, and you're going to start breathing again. And it's kind of the same thing. Like you can maybe, I think, cut yourself pretty deep in order to like get yourself going, but you can't do it to the extent that it needs to be done. I'm going to answer my own question real quick that Zach asked me, and then we can go into something else. But Zach asked, like, what did the Spirit convict in you? And for me, the thing that I've really been working on is trying to be more vulnerable and emotional. Like I mentioned in the sermon, like I'm at really high T, so feelings and stuff are gross. But even in that sermon, in two different ways. One, I was expecting because I was more vulnerable than I normally am, but also at the end, I wasn't expecting the emotional part. And so like the Spirit, even in that, was like taking off the old self. Like literally while I was preaching, it was like removing the old self and putting on this newer, more vulnerable, more emotional self. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is happening while I'm doing it. And I didn't even think of that. And like really, I didn't think about that until Zach like asked me that question. But
that's super cool, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. So Jake, what does it mean? We're running shortish on time here, but from Jake's perspective, what does it mean that we are light?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you the exact verse, but I don't know, like in our YA group, we're just like studying Luke, and it's such a like recurring theme in Luke as well, that like we are light, and like light is so important. But I think like in Ephesians and in this context, like I think it's just meant to be, you know, like this whole world and the context that we live in, like it's just filled with darkness. And as Christians, like we're supposed to just, and this might be a simple answer, but like we're just supposed to bring light into the darkness, you know, and like we're not emitting that light. Like we're simply a reflection of that light, and like Christ is manifesting himself in us, and that's why we are light. But man, I like, I as silly as that might sound, or maybe not, like we have to do that. And there's so much pain and so much just darkness everywhere that like we have to do that. And not only for other people, but for ourselves as well. You know, like there's darkness in us that needs to be brought out into the light. And I think just like thinking about the city of Ephesus, right? It was like this coastal port city where all of the ships would come in and out. As a big trade center. And so they would, you know, sailors, right, who have been at sea for a long time, they would come in and
go to port, and they would go straight to like the temple of Artemis of the Ephesians, who was the goddess of like new life and reproduction. And so the priests and priestesses there, like that was how you worshipped her. If you catch my drift. And like even the statues of Artemis were pretty risque, and that's just one piece of it. It's this multicultural, ethnic place that like all of these religions and stuff were in, and literally one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world is there, and that's where Paul's like, be like here, and and really what that means is just like be different. You know, I just had lunch with one of your mentors, actually, Donnie Conger, and I had asked him like, what's your story, bro? Like, how are you doing, or how'd you get where you are? And he's just telling me like he didn't go to school or anything, and he said all I know is like how I used to be and how I was, or how I used to be and how I was and how I am now, and like the difference, right? And if I can articulate that difference to our students and say that you can do the same thing, then like everything else will fall in its place. And like, yes, he knows the Bible, and yes, he studies and all of these things, but like that's maybe like that's the basis of his knowledge, and maybe that ought to be ours too. It's just like I know where I was, and I know where I am now.
Yeah. And
somewhere along the way, something happened, but that difference is the key. So it's not like we're like being a light. It's just like different. If everything else is dark, then like if you're different than that, then you're obviously going to stand out. You're going to be a light just by being in the Christ-shaped life.
Well, I think it's too just like, you know, you talked a big deal about like Ephesus and like how they worshiped like that, and I think it's like bringing back the light that was originally there, you know, because like sex is a beautiful thing, and like God created that, and like they had distorted it, you know, and that's really all that like Satan does is like he takes something, because he's not creating anything, like he's just taking something and distorting it into being what it's not originally intended to be, you know. So I think it's like, hey, like there is light in sex, but like not in the way that you're doing it, you know. So it's like I'm gonna bring this light and show you the light back in the way that it should be originally intended.
Theologically in Ephesians 1-3, and practically in Ephesians 5:21, 22, 23. Submit to one another out of love for Christ. Wives, submit to your husbands, and then husband. Ooh. Yeah, I don't think that is like only like a passage about how to redeem sex, but I think that's could be a big part of it that's at play there. That's fascinating. Yeah. Ephesians is awesome, and honestly, like any of the literature to the church in Ephesus is pretty incredible. Like Acts 19-20 is like the meat of the book of Acts, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. Obviously, like Acts chapter 2 and the coming of the Holy Spirit's great, but that stuff, and then like Ephesus and the 1st and 2nd Timothy's rich, and then Revelation is my favorite book. You know that, and so that's awesome. I could keep going.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
And again, we've talked about how we want to keep this like 20, 25 minutes or so, and I think we're about there. So we're going to wrap it up for now, but we'll have an actual sermon that neither one of us preached next week to talk about, discuss. And
until next time on Memento Podcast.
Sorry, I really wanted to do that this whole time.
You've been itching for it, So I noticed that today you did a lot better about touching your nose, but today it was the hat. It was about
the hat.
That.
Dang it, man. I really
the
tried.
Golden locks of hair.
I tried, bro. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just like I'm thinking and I gotta like touch my face for some reason. That's probably why I have a beard, because I get zits if I didn't do that.
I don't know what that has to do with anything, but
oils, dude. Oils on your fingers.
Thanks for checking us out, in spite of talking about acne and boils and all of oils, not boils. I was reading Exodus this morning. Bro. I was reading Exodus and the plagues this morning. Okay, daggum. What am I saying? Signing off. All right. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Memento, a podcast from Washington Avenue Christian Church. If you liked us and like this, make sure that you subscribe to our channel or to our podcast and hit the notification buttons so you get the little ping whenever we drop a new episode. We look forward to hanging out with you guys again next week. We love you, and we'll talk to you soon.